Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, One Piece Chapter 1080 is out. If you guys haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. I feel like you guys can count on me to not overstate the chapter, at least too much. If I don't like it, you guys know it. If I like it, you guys know it. Consistency. This chapter is possibly the most hype since I have been covering YouTube, which I hate saying this, I really do, because we just had the last chapter with Shanks, which was awesome. So yeah, I think that you can pretty much gather it's been a pretty stellar back-to-back weeks. But man, from like the get-go, I don't know, something about it just reminds me of Marineford. It felt like Marineford. We really haven't done too many comparisons with Marineford since I started the channel, so maybe this is the first time it bears like some explanation. If I'm comparing anything to Marineford, Oda has knocked it out of the park. Which, as a side note, Marineford was the first arc that I was weekly with. And I was there with people that were not happy with the events there. You would not believe, okay? But I was not one of these people, and I'm sure that a lot of you, as you were watching the anime, or even if you were reading weekly, are not the same as well. Marineford, every single week, was a freaking banger. And so, what it is about this chapter, the introduction of Sword, Garp, the substituents, it reminds me of the feeling that I had when the Whitebeard pirates were introduced. Wano was an incredible arc. You guys know I wasn't a big fan of the end, but actually like weekly following it, incredible. The battle in Onigashima, basically a banger every week in the same way. But one thing that it didn't accomplish was I was never really that invested in the Beast Pirates. I just wasn't. You pretty much had King, and that was it. Queen and Jack had already been introduced, and the hype for them somewhat fizzled. The Flying Six, it was good, it just wasn't Marineford. Going back to Whole Cake Island and the Big Mom Pirates was very similar. Katakuri was carrying the whole show. The other Big Mom Pirates were simply lumped together. It's like Katakuri, everyone else. Although I gotta say, maybe take a step back here, the Enraged Army moment in Whole Cake Island was incredible. Maybe an even better comparison to this moment is the introduction of the Revolutionaries, which I was also here for. But again, this just and undoubtedly in my mind tops it, and it isn't even close. And that probably has a lot to do with Garp himself. It also has a lot to do with the Blackbeard Pirates being here and the members of the Revolutionary Army, the commanders. They never really seemed like top tier fighters to me. The same mystique isn't quite there. But yeah, still not Marineford. And what I'm talking about here is like the introduction of characters like Marco the Phoenix, Diamond Jozu, Vista, Oars, all centered around the legend himself, Whitebeard. That introduction, the feel of it, can't be described, but I'm sure that most of you understand what I'm talking about. Amazing. And this was like that. It felt like that. I think that a lot of it had to do with pacing. When it comes to like the Flying Six, for instance, we get to see them, but their actual introductions, reveals of powers, and it was relatively drawn out. With the Enraged Army, I think that there was a lot of characters that were just simply there that weren't really highlighted. In this, it felt like just rapid fire, bang, 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 of a bunch of characters that are immediately hype. It feels like for the first time in the entire story, all due respect to the admirals, okay, first time in the entire story that we can see the true power of the Marines. As I was reading the chapter, I almost envisioned Garp as a pirate. Fun fact, in the original one-shot versions of One Piece, Garp was a pirate. And you know, the line is blurred in a lot of weird ways just because Luffy is a pirate. Some are good, some are bad, some pirates fight other pirates. You know, it's just weird. But with Garp essentially going AWOL here, he already pretty much acts like a pirate. That's how I saw them. This is the true Marine pirate crew, unveiled in all of their glory. The Marines finally don't feel like a bunch of top tiers surrounded by scrubs who you can essentially ignore. And a lot of that was the perspective of the story that we're given in the chapter, right? The Marines are now the heroes. You know, we're rooting for them, which is strange by itself, and I'm here for it. But yeah, let's go back. It just feels like I finally understand the vision of Sword. We've been speculating about Sword. Oda's been teasing it. We know it's been a thing for months to years now. And, you know, I'm reading this chapter and I'm like, wait a second. The hero of the Marines, right? Garp the hero, they called him. And then the next hero is going to be Kobe. This is the Pirate King version of the Marines, straight up. So you have King of the Marines, Garp, and you have his commanders. That's who all these characters felt like to me. And Kobe is your chosen one from the other side of the fence. The one that Garp has been waiting for, you might say. But important in all of this is that members of SWORD turn in their commissions. They're technically no longer Marines. Like, the whole idea of being a pirate, or at least how I see it in the story, is they're just this force of chaos, led by their, impulses, their dreams, their intuition. They do what they want when they want. Obviously, the Marines don't function in the same way. There's a hierarchy, there's rules, there's orders, you must follow them. So in essence, a big difference between pirates and Marines is how free they are. But SWORD is your get out of jail free card for Marines to act like pirates. I really have no idea if it realistically makes sense for it to function in the way that it does, but I absolutely love the creative decisions that Oda made here. Like the fact that members of SWORD can still operate within the Marines. They're still like Captain Kobe, and he could still lead a ship. That was the impression that I have, right? But when push comes to shove, if Kobe decides, hey, I'm gonna go do something, he can do it. You can go back to someone like X-Drake. X-Drake was a member of SWORD. We kind of thought beforehand, well, there's just this, dictator at top, right? That's just telling all the members of SWORD what they should be doing at all times. So X-Drake was ordered to join Kaido, but maybe not. He's a member of SWORD. He turned in his commission, which means that at some point in time he can just say, look, I've created my own mission, and I'll live with the consequences of it. If you cross the line too far, the Marines will simply disown you. In all honesty, we really shouldn't consider them Marines at all. I'll continue to do that because I like that, and I think that a lot of the members of SWORD still see themselves as Marines, or see themselves as representing the Marines, but they just do so in a different way. They feel like maybe the structure of it does not allow them to perform their jobs, carry out justice as they see it. I don't know, man, it's just freaking cool. I love everything about it. I also thought that Blackbeard's comment about all this was interesting. It was explained to him what exactly SWORD was from Aokiji. As a side note, Aokiji's a member of SWORD, obviously. Garp is a member of SWORD, obviously. And we're given the impression probably there is a lot more than we even know about. Blackbeard says, oh, I get it now. So that's why some rats scurry away, while others don't hesitate to gnaw on your fingertips. I know which ones I prefer. Essentially, right, Marines aren't allowed to fight Yonko, or aren't allowed to fight powerful pirate groups, and we've seen this demonstrated recently in Egghead. They're very worried about engaging with some of the top pirates, but Blackbeard's talking about how some rats, he encounters them, they run away because they're following their orders, while others don't, or they're at least tempted, right? That's what he's talking about. So these are members of SWORD. Which ones do he prefer, right? It's probably the ones that are pirate-like, I would guess. But maybe not, it's left pretty open-ended. Either way, the question itself seems mildly important, could be interesting, and I think that we still have a lot to learn about Blackbeard himself, which is another part of this chapter I really liked. Actually, let's not move on from Blackbeard. So he hears this explanation of SWORD. Kobe admits that he is a member of SWORD, and basically, you can't use him as bait, because he's not, they'll just cut him off, right? And Blackbeard's like, well, I'm not budging on this one. Let's see how far this plan takes us. I doubt the government would write Kobe off that easily. After all, the public wouldn't be pleased to hear that they lost their precious hero. If things don't go my way, I can at least give the government a bloody nose. If we're right that Garp is a member of SWORD, also the former Marine hero, he's contacted a bunch of other members of SWORD, it just seems absurdly likely at this point, plus the way that he's operated just in general, it just screams it. So, you essentially have two heroes in a row, which are both free agents, right? Swords, rogue Marines. It shows you how the Marines are limited by simply the structure of the organization, that the person that rises above and becomes, the most noteworthy member of the entire group is one who's likely not technically a member. It's almost like a catch-22. Reminds me of what Luffy said about the Pirate King being the freest. You don't become the Pirate King by holding back when the getting gets good. Likewise, you don't become the hero of the Marines by avoiding the fights that matter. You now can look at the Rocky Port incident from almost the opposite direction, right? That why did Kobe become so famous? Well, he did something that other Marines couldn't do. And it just so happens that he didn't cross any lines, which forced the Marines to disown him. I think that you should look at Garp in the past in the very same way. All of his fights with Roger, legendary. All of this was created because he had the freedom. And as a random aside, this is actually really similar to what the Marines did by incorporating the Chichibukai, right? It's just like a thing which breaks their rules. They're utilizing the other side, the dark side of the Force. But Blackbeard made a pretty on-point deduction here, an insanely smart moment if you ask me. Like, you have this Marine that supposedly doesn't matter, right? That's the whole idea behind it, but they've perhaps miscalculated. Because while the Marines might be able to cut ties with their hero, the people will not. Blackbeard, channeling his inner mastermind, is like, look, at the very least here, I can flip this into massive reputation gains for myself while making the government look really bad. Best case scenario is that they want Kobe back so much and they realize what his capture does to them, that he has a bargaining chip in which he can physically gain something. Again, another side note here, but I like this plan from Blackbeard. I like this explanation from Oda. It was so cohesive within the chapter. It's almost something that you could overlook, right? But when Blackbeard first captured Kobe, it wasn't entirely clear what he planned to do with it, and this made it, it clicks. But to go back to Garp and the essence of Sword, Sword gives them the power to do what they feel like is right, that as a normal Marine, they couldn't do. And so I wonder, Garp as the former hero of the Marines, I wonder if he realized how important he was to the world, right? Like this circumstance that's happening with Kobe right now, was this something that Garp was ever aware of that could possibly happen to him, or that he might have been afraid of? There's definitely some potential for a parallel here as well, because we had Roger and Garp versus Rox in God Valley, right? But was it in any way a similar situation there, where Rox managed to capture Garp, and Roger was the one to free him? I'm not saying that happened, and obviously Garp is on another level entirely. He is so strong, it's hard to imagine that. I'm just saying that the potential is there. It's just crazy how much time can potentially change your perspective, but Kobe is the future hero of the Marines, so by the time, in like 5 to 10 years, he's going to be Garp level. And yet this thing occurred to him, right, in his lifetime. So it could have been true for Garp sometime in the past. Either way, if he was aware of something like this, he might have been the only one to realize how important it would be to rescue him. Whether intentionally or not, Blackbeard contrived a circumstance which picked the lock of how Sword operates. And, but the one thing that he didn't consider, right, is he's a member of Sword, we'll see what comes of it, but at the very least, I'll give the Marines a black eye. What he didn't consider was other members of Sword intervening. So this is just one half of my logic for Garp, right? Like, why did Garp finally come out of retirement, finally, really do something? And it's because he realized how important Kobe was, not just for the future of the Marines, the future of the world, but also in just the present circumstances dealing with the Yonko Blackbeard. How much could be potentially lost in this one moment? Garp realized it. On the other half, man, this chapter brought me to tears. It straight up did. And part of them were tears of hype with Garp's final punch. It was just incredible. If he's past his prime, man, then what the hell did we miss, is basically what I think. But, Whitebeard was sick. Straight up, he was on, medicine. And so Garp is healthy, and it shows it. So that punch, man, tears of hype for sure. But I couldn't help thinking throughout the entire chapter of, I follow these character journeys. They matter to me, and I think that Oda, when he really cares, he is meticulous in these journeys, and it's really hard to follow because of so many chapters in between when we follow journeys outside of the strats. And it's crazy that Oda keeps up with this and progresses character arcs. But the last major time, the last major moment, emotional moment that we had for Garp was in Marineford, when he wanted so badly to save Ace, but couldn't, or decided that he couldn't. I really do wonder how much this event wore down Garp's armor. The impression that I have of him, and it's subject to change obviously because there's still so much that we don't know, but I view Garp, strangely, as being very disciplined, that even while being a member of Sword, headcanon still, I want y'all guys to keep that in mind, but being a member of Sword for a very long time, he's made sure not to cross any lines. And I think that it's because he there's something that he understands about his role and wants this moment, this moment where he can never go back to the Marines. He wants it to absolutely be worth it. Again, just fully headcanon mode here, but justice clearly has to matter to Garp a lot. And along with justice is the ability to enforce it, right? The ability to act on it. As we compared earlier, there's certain similarities between Sword and Shichibukai. And there are absolutely advantages to being on the Marines' good side. Mainly, you don't have to fight the Marines. They're not going to be ordered to follow you, or if they encounter you, are not going to be ordered to fire. My prediction is that despite, the imperfections with how the world government operates the Celestial Dragons and even the Marines themselves, Garp believes in what the Marines are. Even if they can't always do what he thinks is right all of the time, I don't think that he wants to become their enemy. If we think about Garp as Luffy's grandfather, yes, he's very disciplined, but at the same time, he's also not disciplined. I think that Garp and Luffy probably share the trait that when push comes to shove, if there's something that they absolutely must do, that the vast majority of the time, they will do it, particularly if they don't see any reason not to. So let's say that Garp saves Ace in Marineford. What happens after that? Well, Garp doesn't hang it up. He doesn't retire because justice matters to him. So whether it's under the banner of the Marines or on his own, he's going to be doing what he wants. He's probably going to be a hero to somebody. And the moment that the Marines become his enemies, they will be in his way. And in the process of doing what he wants, he will have to make them look bad, thereby undermine the organization which he holds in such high respect. I understand that this is a bit of a tangent, and you can ask, why even bring this up? But, I just want to understand Garp in those moments with Ace. Why didn't he save Ace? Did he really believe that Ace was going to be some sort of future danger? No, he's a member of Sword, probably, which means that at any point in time, the government could cut him off, right? There's strong reasons which held him back, and I think that we do need those. But like I said, man, at the beginning, how we've gone on a major loop here, but I think that event probably wore down his armor, and I read the chapter that way, whether it's true or not. Garp had finally had enough. He wasn't going to lose another son. And I chose that really specifically, man, because Garp just felt like Whitebeard in this chapter. From the, comparison of it made me feel like, when the Whitebeard pirates were introduced, important there was how awesome Whitebeard was himself, the gravity that he brought from the very first panel. Man, Garp brought it just the same. And yeah, in a totally different way, but man, it just worked in the same way. But I will tap the brakes just a little bit, because I don't think that Garp freeing Ace is quite to the same level as freeing Kobe. In order to free Ace, he literally had to fight the Marines. In order to free Kobe, he has to fight Blackbeard. So I kind of see this as being more like all of his clashes with Roger or any other pirate in the past. The simple rule is just win, right? And, the Marines will look the other way as for any insubordination. At least that was how they operated before. I am curious about how Akainu will feel about Garp's insubordination, what will happen after this. That's all. It could become a big thing. I think that it is worthy right now to consider the differences between Sengoku and Akainu. But yeah, there's absolutely a million things to talk about in this chapter. I just want to give a moment for Kobe. I love that Kobe still feels like the same character, even though he has grown so much. Again, just masterful characterization. He feels like his own person. He hasn't become someone else, but he also is just so much cooler than he was before at the same time. Like the final version of what he always should have been. I don't know if actually I've ever seen anything like this before. Maybe I have. Maybe it's similar to other things, but I would describe Kobe as a big-hearted badass, which is just a very, it's a strange combination of words there, but totally makes sense. The world's strongest crybaby. Like if Chopper were cool. We also got to see members of the Blackbeard Pirates and double fruit reveals for some of the Titanic commanders that were left stationed in the Pirate Islands. My general impression is now I understand why some of these people were in Impel Down level 6. Mainly, it's not like I think that they're the strongest characters in the universe. I don't think that. But what they do have is just absurdly destructive abilities. It is just so One Piece. It is so Oda for Sanwan Wolf to be a giant who ate the giantification fruit. But just the perspective of him lying down in the town, I understand that the size sometimes changes, but I think that Oda probably made a point here of like, look, this is how big this dude is, and you realize he could just roll over and an entire town would disappear, right? The island fruit is absurd. It just, obviously it looks like the superior version of Pika's devil fruit, but if you can literally manipulate an entire island, I mean, Jesus, the amount of life lost, it would be untold if he wanted to, and I imagine at some point he will. With these two powers in particular, you can see how if they went on a warpath, thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of lives could be lost very quickly. Which is, it's not like they can't be beaten, right? Like Garp could go in there with a punch and knock Sanwan Wolf probably out. I'm not sure, maybe it doesn't work that way, but at the very least, Garp is probably beating them in a one-on-one fight. But it's about how destructive their abilities are. Even someone like Vasco Shot, who has some sort of alcohol, glug related fruit, he's like, I'm gonna burn down the whole town. I bet he could. Like a one-man Buster Call. So all this was really interesting, even the characterization. Like, Abuelo Pizarro seemed more concerned than the other two about getting on Blackbeard's bad side, which says something about them, and, I'm here for it. There's also a really interesting dichotomy as well, because you have these fruits which appear very flashy. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have the Invisible Man Shiryu. We also know Katarina Devon is somewhere can transform into other people. And I think Lafitte's probably of the ability of that you would classify in kind of the same way as all kind of sneaky fruits. So you have like the loudest fruits possible, and then you have the sneakiest fruits possible, all bunched together, and I'm sure that Oda did that very intentionally. We also learned that Blackbeard's main objective for capturing Kobe, or at least the thing that he was specifically asking for, was, hey, I got Kobe, now make me part of your world government, give me an island, call me a king, that's cool. And I think that I got some questions about this of like, what does this mean? What's Blackbeard's end game here? Obviously, we're in theory territory once again, but I just think that Blackbeard's end game is to become king of the world, right? And so in order to become king of the world, then he needs to dethrone the world government and the celestial dragons. I think that he's a plotter. That's just what he is. He plots upon plots upon plots. And I think that he believes, as a member of the world government, he could give them, as he said in this chapter, a bloody nose. Again, I think about the Chichibukai and how that system came back to hurt the Marines' perception probably very badly. Even though they thought that they needed that strength or needed to do it for whatever reason, I think that the same would probably be true for Blackbeard as a member of the world government, potentially attending the Reverie, right? He's dreaming big here, but the ultimate goal isn't to be a member of the world government. No, he's looking to take them down, and this just seems like a Blackbeard type plot of very minimal risk and high reward. But it also has me thinking about like real life pirates, because real-life pirates from real history attempted to form nations, and in some cases wanted these nations recognized as what they were. We know that Oda likes to use real-life pirate history within the story of One Piece, sometimes in subtle ways, sometimes in less subtle ways, but also felt like a little bit of that as well. And for me, it just has me thinking about, what the nature of a nation itself, right? Like, we live in the present where sort of all these lines are already drawn, and we're indoctrinated into a system that already existed, but first the system came out of something else, like, it just makes you think about how arbitrary a lot of things really are. Like, I live in the United States, and it wouldn't even be a thing. We would just be like West England, if not for a War of Independence. So a guy like Blackbeard being king, absurd thought, right? Well, that's just kind of how it is. In all aspects of life, you have the strength to sort of carve out your little spit of governance, and, you basically need acknowledgement. And voila! Suddenly you have the power to dictate your own laws, enforce, your own worldview. Anyway, we see that after Moria was defeated, he's just been kept prisoner in this island. This is actually one of the more interesting things from the chapter, believe it or not. Just because what is Oda's plan with Moria? I hate to take such a hype chapter and make it negative in any way, but you guys know I've been thinking about like Oda might be trying to speed up the story. Obviously, it doesn't feel that way right now. It's certainly not taking away my enjoyment right now. But when it comes to certain characters, it's like, well, maybe he had a plan for them and then realized, look, this isn't adding as much as I thought that it would. And it would just suit the story more to go away from it, But it's really interesting because, it's not clear what the point was of Moria getting captured by the Blackbeard pirates in the first place. It's just totally like, why even have that moment if he's just going to be captured the whole time, and then Kobe's going to save him, and then he's just going to be a filler background character, some sort of final war thing, or maybe not even there at all. So, but it could also, on the glass half full here, it could be something totally unpredictable and interesting, and I certainly hope so. So rambling aside here, it's really just, what was the point of Blackbeard capturing Moria, and what is the point of the Marines freeing him? But I gotta say, there is no guarantee that they actually succeed in doing this. I do think that Garp is going to win, and they're going to leave with Kobe, and overall it's going to be a loss for the Blackbeard pirates. That is my impression right now. But it absolutely does not have to be the case, and I certainly wouldn't use the last panel here as like evidence of Garp just wrecked all of the Blackbeard pirates and it's over. Because we don't see them actually fighting the Blackbeard pirates who matter. So this could end up becoming a thing that is more than just one chapter. I'm not certain if this is good or bad for the story. I feel like if you're going to do it, go all the way. So I would almost prefer if Garp just sort of came in flashily, rescued Kobe, left with what he wanted to, and then, the Blackbeard pirates are like, wait, what just happened? But yeah, it's really open for interpretation right now. I also wouldn't be against Garp flexing some more. We'll see, all right? Oda is cooking something up here, so we're at the dinner table, napkins are tucked in, silverware is out, plates just ready to be filled. But yeah, we're still going, guys. Lots of thoughts about this chapter. I have wondered whether Kobe intentionally got captured by the Blackbeard pirates in order to come to the pirate island, Beehive Island, in order to rescue the prisoners that are here. As they were like introduced, and it just seemed like Kobe kind of had an idea of what he wanted to do. Like there was some sort of heroic role that he could perform here. And as a member of SWORD, it would make sense for him to sort of make these executive decisions, so that was just a thought that occurred to me. I wonder if it's true. I also somewhat dismissed the idea that there is a leader of SWORD earlier in this video, and I just want to make sure that I clarify here that it just seems open-ended. And I wouldn't be opposed to someone like Garp being this leader, that having some sort of overarching plot for SWORD and the Marines. Well, I like the freedom element of essentially Marines, justice and Marines is a hyped up thing, and how individual it is, having the freedom to sort of pursue their own individual ideas of what needs to be done. I like that. I also like the idea that there's like a grand scheme, and that they're making moves. So we'll see. I also wonder if we've got sort of a biased perspective about SWORD right now. Right, you're seeing Garp, you're seeing Kobe. We don't know too much about the people that Garp recruited, but you're probably of, similar types, right? But, a theory that I had from a long time ago and a lot of people didn't like was that Akainu could be a member of SWORD. I don't know if that works at all anymore with him being the actual fleet admiral. It seems like that wouldn't work. But that aside, right, just think about a Akainu type character, right? Or a pirate-like Marine that verges on Big Mom levels of control, right? A thorough justice sort of character. And like as a member of SWORD that we could eventually meet at some point in time. I just feel like we've gotten a slanted view here, and it could end up being a more diverse group than we know. Another really interesting side thought that I had is, what about Fujitora, right? How Fujitora and Green Bull were recruited as admirals was seen as controversial in some way, like they were pariahs almost. And now we have the existence of SWORD revealed, where swords, they're not technically Marines. And you could see why, I think you probably already see where I'm going here, you could see why the government wouldn't want to promote somebody who isn't technically a Marine to the position of admiral. It just, you start to undermine the whole secrecy of the system. But maybe out of desperation, they needed strong Marines to go and become new admirals because of the balance of powers. Maybe Fujitora and Green Bull are both SWORD. Certainly when looking at someone like Fujitora, who directly disobeyed orders in Dressrosa and clearly has an agenda justice of his own and totally has the willpower to go and seek it himself, right? It seems like a sword thing to do. And it's almost, you could almost read that whole dialogue between Akainu and him at the end of Dressrosa differently. Like, hey, if you don't like this, then disown me. Moving on, with Elbaf coming up, I'm now officially excited to learn what San Juan Wolf's history was with the Giants of Elbaf, mainly because the way that he dressed in this chapter made it much more abundantly clear that he's probably a giant. He's dressed like a Viking, he's probably a giant of Elbaf. There might be a backstory there, which, you know, again with this thoughts that maybe Garp does a hit and run, you know, like a tee-hee-hee, I got Kobe, now we're out, you know, but it just leads to Elbaf, suddenly the Blackbeard pirates are there, which they might just be there. Anyway, all this could come together, and it's just another layer of something that I'm looking forward to. It's also important to point out who is not on Beehive right now, of the members of Blackbeard Pirates, and of course Blackbeard himself. I think that this was just, I'm so glad that Oda chose to do this, because, you know, I don't want a Garp and Blackbeard fight right now. I just don't. I don't want, like, giving Garp this win accomplishes so much. Just like you have a flow for an arc as a whole, or for the story as a whole, there's a flow when it comes to fight progression. And, you know, you don't want to reach the climax first, right? You want to build up the conflict, right? There's a way that they weave together. Like a thing that I've heard before is very common for the bad guy to win twice before he loses. In this case, obviously it's reversed, but, you know, no matter what, from this point onwards, we're going to see Garp differently. He's going to feel differently, and if there comes a point in time, and it's not a guarantee, but if there comes a point in time that he dies and gets defeated, it's going to hit so much harder having been here for this moment. And that's accomplished because probably Blackbeard is not here. Is Blackbeard on the ship that's heading to Egghead? I personally think so, but, you know, I've seen people throw out that Law won. I mean, I guess, you know, he could have used his room abilities just to steal Blackbeard's ship, right? I hope so. That would be the one way that I'd be okay with Law winning. You know, just he like roomed Blackbeard's ship for himself and escaped. And then this puts me down like the rabbit hole of what is Oda's plan here. Of the Blackbeard pirates are taking so many losses right now. So how's he gonna flip that around so that they become the big baddies and yada yada? Right? We're going way off the deep end. I'm just saying, like, this is what I live for. Right now we sit on a minefield of incredible possibility. And Oda can take it whichever direction his imagination wants it to, and that's partly why it is so incredible. And it works in so many different directions, you just let your mind just expand. But yeah, one last thought to finish the video. You know, we saw Tashigi here. I'm ready for some Smoker. And what could come of this? Could Smoker be Sword already? I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. We'll see. That's another thing which just fascinates me. But as always, guys, curious as to what you guys think, whether you noticed something from the chapter that I might have missed, just share your thoughts. Absolutely top tier chapter, no questions asked. Remember to check out my book, The Booms, links in the description as well as pinned in the comments. And if you guys do happen to read it, please leave a review so that you can let other people know what you thought about it. Like the video, subscribe, click the bell to be notified, join the squad, and as always, guys, have a wonderful day.